Another Bengals moment with Mo Egger.
As my friend Alan Cutler say, it was a tough day to be a Bengals fan. Cincinnati loses to Pittsburgh 35-7. The Bengals AFC North Championship hopes have all but evaporated. Now it's on to the final quarter of the season and a playoff push. 3 home games out of 4, starting with this week's game against the Houston Texans. It is a Bengals moment. Glad you're with us on ESPN1530.com and 700WLW.com. My name is Mo Egger. It is 4 Down Territory. Pretty much everything about Sunday sucked in every which way imaginable. The Bengals were outplayed, outcoached, out-toughed. Any way you could be outed, the Bengals were in Pittsburgh. So much to sort through, but let's face it, when you lose by 28 points, there's not really a lot to analyze. The Steelers are better. But when I think of Sunday's game, my mind keeps racing back to the sequence early. Bengals with the first and goal, a touchdown play nullified by a penalty, a field goal nullified by a penalty. Those things can happen against good teams, on the road in big games. And until they don't for this team, they're not going to win against good teams, on the road, in big games. In games like the one they played on Sunday against Pittsburgh, you can't play from behind. The Bengals did the first time these two teams played. By what they did early in this game, it pretty much meant that the Bengals were going to be behind the 8 ball all afternoon. And as much as we like this team, they simply don't have enough firepower to be able to come from behind against defenses like the one they faced this past Sunday, and like the defense they faced this Sunday when they take on the Texans at Paul Brown Stadium. All right, let's stop racing for the excuse button. There aren't any when you lose by 28 points. Injuries are a factor. They're a factor for everybody at the end of the season. Got to play through them. This team is supposed to be deep. It wasn't deep enough to offset who they lost on Sunday. And let's stop with the officiating. Now, like anybody, I was upset when I saw the Reggie Nelson hands to the face. There were no hands to the face. Or the Chris Crocker pass interference, or especially the block in the back that aided Antonio Brown's game-clinching punt return for a touchdown. But you know what? The Bengals were still beaten by a better team. James Harrison, they had no answer for him. They really had no answer for that excruciatingly long 10-play, 93-yard drive in the third quarter that really salted the game. They really couldn't get anything going offensively. They were beaten. The refereeing was a part of the problem. It wasn't the problem. And when you lose by as many points as the Bengals lost to the Steelers, you have lost the right to blame the officiating. The Bengals were beaten by a better team. It might pain me to say that. It does pain me to say that. But I'm not going to list refereeing and injuries at the top of the list of problems the Bengals faced at Heinz Field. All right, so there's one guy I'm going to come down on, and chances are you're going to agree with me, although I guess there's a possibility that you're going to think I'm being too unfair. Brandon Tate, got to go. Sorry. Look, I know he had the return for a touchdown against the Seattle Seahawks. That might have, in hindsight, been the worst thing to happen. Brandon Tate is terrible. He's either fumbling kicks, not hitting holes, or dancing around before getting tackled. I simply can't stomach to watch Brandon Tate return kicks anymore. Give me Bernard Scott. Give me Andrew Hawkins. Hell, at this point, give me Brandon Phillips. Go get Tremaine Mack off the drunk tank and get him to return kicks. At least he can hang on to the football. Brandon Tate is awful. I don't have anything more to say about that other than I am going to strangle myself with a microphone cord if I have to watch Brandon Tate return kicks anymore. He is simply maybe the most loathsome Bengal of all time, and he's got to go. All right, so we enter into the final quarter of the season, and let's be real. Chances of winning a division title probably aren't that good. Cincinnati trails the Steelers by 2, and because they've lost both head-to-head matchups, basically 3 games, and they also trail the Baltimore Ravens by 2, and neither team has a challenging schedule in front of them in the final 4 games of the season. And so the focus now needs to be on the push for a wild card spot. The Bengals still lead that chase. However, Tennessee, the Raiders, and the New York Jets are all hot on their heels. Losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers is not unforgivable, but what it has done is it has put a premium on beating teams the Bengals should. They have 2 more games against teams that you look at and go, the Bengals should win them. Arizona here, even though they're playing better, and obviously the game in St. Louis a week from Sunday against the Rams. That takes us to the final game of the season against Baltimore. I'd like to think that Baltimore's playoff positioning is settled. We almost should root for them to wrap up the division, keep the Steelers as the wild card, and maybe get home field so that a Ravens team rests guys in that final game of the year. We'll see. This game on Sunday against the Texans, I got to admit, it worries me. Now, their quarterback, TJ Yates, could walk in this room right now and strangle me with the microphone cord I'm going to use to kill myself when Brandon Tate returns another kick, and I wouldn't recognize him. Gary Kubiak should be, to this point, the NFL's Coach of the Year. He's done a remarkable job. He's on his third quarterback. Mario Williams done for the season. Andre Johnson hurt again, and he's iffy for this game on Sunday against the Bengals with a hamstring injury. Still, that defense ranked in the top 5 in both passing and rush defense. They are a good D, led by Connor Barwin, UC guy, and Jonathan Joseph, of course, the former Bengal. This team has to reverse a trend. You think back to 2003, with a chance to go to the postseason, the Bengals lose the last 2. You think back to 2005. The Bengals, with a chance to solidify their playoff positioning, kind of fell apart at the end of the season. You think back to 2006. All the Bengals needed to do was win one game to get to the playoffs. They lost their last 3. And you think back to 2009, the Bengals again did make the postseason, but they had a chance to solidify their positioning, perhaps get home field, and they played their worst football of the season in the season's final quarter. All of those under Marvin Lewis, that trend has to be reversed. I think it's going to be interesting on Sunday. The Bengals take on a Texans team that lacks pizzazz. And let's face it, in the game against the Cleveland Browns, traditional rival, 7-4, or a team playing for a 7-4 record, they played in front of 17,000 empty seats. This was after moral victories against the Steelers and the Ravens. Cincinnati, at least from a ticket buying perspective, did not react to moral victories. How will they react to a 28-point beatdown at the hands of the Pittsburgh Steelers? The Bengals have 3 home games remaining. Obviously, you kind of have to separate the Baltimore game because of what that could mean and how good a game that could be. But I kind of doubt that the Bengals are going to be able to sell out enough tickets against Houston or even Arizona on Christmas Eve to get the game on local television. Regardless, we'll have another Bengals moment next week. Thanks for checking us out. Send me an email, mo@espn1530.com, or shoot me a tweet and promise me that the Bengals will cut Brandon Tate at MoEgger1530. Have a great week.